and welcome to the channel. I'm Lexicon, and today is the first video of Spooky Month. So for today, I wanted to try adapting some monsters into the modern era, from movies, books, and myths. After a lot of thought, I decided to go with one more classic monster, Dracula, and then two that you might not think of right away when you see a Halloween monster, Medusa and Cthulhu. I love mythology and stuff too much to pass up an opportunity like this, and I also just really wanted to draw some snake hair. But yeah, let's get started. So first, in honor of this being, a Halloween video, I went with the more classic option. Dracula is a horror and Halloween icon, popularized by so many works of fiction it'd be hard to track them all down. His original Bram Stoker novel is what I originally wanted to base him off of, since that was his truest form, but you can see in my little mock-up section here that I didn't really like the old man aspect of it. And not just because I can't draw old men, and it just didn't grab my attention. An old, stuffy, rich guy could be from any era, really, but someone younger could really help illustrate the modern aspects of our new characters. Basically, I chickened down of the accuracy angle. Sue me, I wanted to draw fun things. This version of Dracula took a little more inspiration off the modern ideas of vampires, while keeping some of the original personality traits. Dracula, the real one from Bram Stoker's novel, is supposed to be this old rich count with business expertise and a habit of preying on young women while seeming educated and polite on the surface. This doesn't seem too out of the ordinary for, a lot of economically privileged men, so it wasn't hard to land on a character archetype for our younger version. Most other depictions of Dracula don't really lean into this slimy businessman angle, more focused on just the aesthetic signature of vampires like cloaks, fangs, and perhaps a widow's peak, like the one from Hotel Transylvania. Even the Dracula from Castlevania, who's most definitely the bad guy, doesn't seem to be interested in being a slimy narcissist so much as just getting vengeance on humans for the death of his wife. Overall, Dracula doesn't seem to follow his old personality very often at all when he's adapted, and it's easy to understand why. The old one was genuinely creepy and not at all redeemable, and that's not exactly something that's fun to have in your story if you want him to be sympathetic. Thankfully though, we're not going for that angle, so if you ever see this Dracula out and about, word of advice, cover your drink. I gave him an updated but still slightly old-fashioned outfit true to his out-of-touch eccentric nature that mimics the look of a cloak. His black fur-lined jacket together with a red button-up evokes the look of one of those Halloween vampire capes without looking too weird or conspicuous. And those sunglasses cheekily perched on his shirt collar and that smug look, and you've definitely got someone who either has an offshore bank account or is trying to sell you some NFTs. I also kept his hair long and slick, since that just screams vampire to me, and I gave him those big old chompers and pointed inhuman ears. His eyes have a little glow to them as well, which seems like the finishing touch for me to really sell the image. I'm not sure how he goes about life convincing everyone he's just some eccentric millionaire throwing elaborate parties and drinking what is definitely absolutely wine, when he looks like, that. But it wouldn't be the first time people overlooked a red flag for the prospect of money. Get it? Cause his shirt is red, cause vampire. I also thought to give him a few little blood splatters on his neck, jacket, and a little bit on his face, because apparently he didn't look suspicious enough to me already. So yeah, here's Count Dracula in the modern day. Now the ones I'm most excited for. Next up, Medusa. Medusa is one of those characters who's been through the ringer when it comes to adaptations and character overhauls through the ages. She's been characterized in so many different ways, used in so many different bits and pieces of media, and her story always seems to change drastically when it's retold. At the core of Medusa's story, though, she is a victim, a young woman who has been cursed by the gods and forced into monsterhood. Medusa's story is grisly and horrible, and I'm not sure how much detail I'm allowed to go into for YouTube, even though I'm not monetized yet. The basic story is that she and Poseidon were going to town in Athena's temple. Medusa's consent in this situation is highly debated and doubtful in my opinion, and as punishment, Medusa was transformed into something so ugly that by looking her in the eyes, you would be turned to stone. Poseidon, of course, gets off scot-free, and the people send a mortal hero, a man named Perseus, to eventually sneak into Medusa's home and kill her once and for all. After all of that, after she was finally put to rest, her head is used as a tool and decoration on Athena's shield, who is the one that cursed her. I'm a big Greek mythology nerd, and one thing you have to understand about Greek myths is that there is no one true story. Two different tellings could be equally valid. Myths were often told orally and evolved over time, so treating them like a contemporary show with canonical documentation and events is just not how it works. So you could go with the better version of the tale, where Medusa broke her vow of chastity on purpose and was punished for that, which takes some, but far from all, of the horror off the story. You could go with the more modern interpretations I've seen thrown around, where Athena's curse was actually a blessing to protect Medusa from the unwanted attention and assault from men going forward. I personally want to lean into the version I think is most fitting, the unbelieved, unsupported, misunderstood victim who's retreated into herself, covered up her face, and stopped worrying about being pretty, who's dealing with the backlash of something she wanted no part in. Wow, Lexicon, I thought we were doing a silly Halloween video. Yeah, I did too, random faithless viewer, but I have a lot of big feelings on Medusa, as it turns out. Anyway, for the art, I drew her in a hoodie and sunglasses to help shield other people from her curse, and shield her from their attention. She has an overall green color scheme, and I gave her scales all over her face to match the snakes she has for hair. The newer depictions of Medusa as this super hot woman have always rubbed me the wrong way, especially considering the context of her story. If anything, I feel she would be more inclined to not be seductive and enticing now that she's a Gorgon. I also wanted to give her a little female symbol somewhere amongst all the snake motifs as a nod to Medusa's place in feminism and feminist symbolism, which migrated from a baseball cap to a patch on the arm of her hoodie. Overall, she ended up really fun to draw, especially her snake hair. So yeah, that's Medusa. I hope you like her. And lastly, a little bit of a mood lifter. I'm going to say a sentence you've never heard before in your life. Ready? Non-binary TikTok influencer Cthulhu. I know it sounds silly, but let me explain. I actually skimmed through some of Call of Cthulhu for this video. I'm a reader, don't get me wrong, but this story was all sorts of hard to get through for a slew of reasons. But I did look specifically for mentions of Cthulhu, and I couldn't find a single thing in the original story that would indicate their mouth would be replaced by tentacles. After some digging, I did find a sketch from H.P. Lovecraft himself of the monster, which featured the tentacle mouth, but nothing in the source material itself, unless I had just missed something, which is, that's a total possibility. Therefore, I think I should have free reign to put the tentacles wherever I wish them to be, and I want my Cthulhu to have a face, so on the back of the head they go. After that, my design for Cthulhu sort of fell apart. At first I had this very clear idea of an influencer in athletic wear, but the further I went, the more things just didn't go my way. I kept having to wrestle with the ink layer, and then the top didn't look how I wanted it to, so I added ruffles without thinking about how that would impact the look, and then I realized jewelry didn't go with activewear anyway. This one was just a mess, honestly, but I don't know, somehow it came together in the end, I think, to a reasonable degree. They lean a bit more femme than I intended, but that's probably just by virtue of me being more comfortable with drawing feminine features and just having a subconscious bias. I had a lot of fun making those tentacles, and putting all those cute little octopus symbols everywhere and giving them octopus eyes was super fun. I also gave them glyph tattoos at the end as a reference to the hieroglyphs Lovecraft mentions in the story. Oh, right, I forgot. I went with a non-binary Cthulhu because of the whole thing Cthulhu has going for them, which is that they're incomprehensible for the human mind. They have no biological sex, and I doubt they conform to any kind of gender norm either. Once again, H.P. Lovecraft has been recorded as saying Cthulhu would be male, but since he insisted this by saying Cthulhu shouldn't be sissified, I elected to again ignore this external input and make them femme-leaning non-binary out of just sheer spite. As for the influencer part, I think that's pretty clear. The whole plot of Call of Cthulhu was, in fact, Cthulhu's Call. They have a lot of influence and demand their followers' attention and loyalty, and much like the almighty algorithm, they follow you no matter where you go. I feel it's a pretty good representation of them. Besides, I suppose even if I did forget their wings and didn't give them the usual squid mouth, I don't think it's too out of the question to say that a modern Cthulhu would be able to take a more humanized form if it allowed them to gain this sort of widespread influence over the internet. If this was some sort of show or movie, they'd have to be powered down visually to be able to be portrayed anyway. So yeah, Cthulhu might have ended up totally unconventional and maybe not at all true to the source material. Whoops. But I had a lot of fun drawing this little mess. I hope it was just as fun to watch. Do you like all the changes to the concept, or are you a purist who wants to push me off a cliff right now? Please do tell. And that's the end of that. Here's all three of them again. Which one was your favorite? How would you have done them differently? And most importantly, are you ready for Halloween? Oh, and a little progress report. As of writing this script, the OC video has reached 96 likes. Hopefully there's a chance it will have reached the 100 like goal by the time this video goes up, but if you want to know if we're having another episode soon, please do go check out that video and drop a like. If you want to see more art I do for myself or art from older videos, I occasionally post to my Instagram under the same name. Drop by and see if that's something you want to follow. As always, thank you so much for watching, especially all the way to the end. If you had fun here today, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. A second of your time helps more than you know, and I'm grateful for everyone. With that said, I'm Lexicon, and I'll see you next time.